So I saw The Lost City starring Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. It's a comedy adventure about Loretta Sage, a novelist who is kidnapped by a crazy billionaire played by Daniel Radcliffe, who's trying to find an ancient lost city that is described in Loretta's books. Now this movie has two very charismatic and talented leads, and it was very difficult to see who else would play their roles. The casting is pretty much spot on, the setting and theme for this movie was teed up for an excellent and exciting ride, but how did it turn out? The story is very similar to Romancing the Stone, about a novelist who is like Loretta, grieving the death of a loved one. Then there's a kidnapping involved, and there's a jungle with a handsome man to accompany her on the quest. You know what? I'm surprised 20th Century Fox haven't sued Paramount for this. But I suppose what separates the two is that the handsome man in The Lost City is played by an idiot rather than a cocky, rugged adventurer. Tatum plays the character of Alan Caprison quite well. His quirks are silly and out of touch and could have been turned up to a higher degree. Him being the cover model for all of Loretta's books is what made her successful, and why her book tours are full of heterosexual women. The introduction of Alan was also quite amusing and gave you an understanding of how hollow his professional relationship with Loretta is. With regards to Bullock's character, she has a very deep and dramatic backstory that clearly made her the most layered character in the film, and I say that like it's not obvious, but you'll be surprised how many movies there are, but the main character isn't the most interesting. Bullock and Tatum's screen time is certainly one of the stronger components of the film, so the opportunity to showcase the polar opposite personalities would surely result in a chaotic and wild ride full of tears and laughter.
It's false. No way. Not this time.
Unfortunately, when the film shies away from the comedy and focuses on the dramatic elements, it feels quite forced and doesn't really blend with the humorous moments so effortlessly. It's kind of like mixing oil with water. It was a shame really, because I'm a huge fan of the swashbuckling genre, whether it be Romancing the Stone, Pirates of the Caribbean, or Indiana Jones. It's a timeless concept that has proven to be successful over a number of decades. The romantic tension between Loretta and Alan didn't feel like it needed to go in that direction. Not because of the age difference, but it just seems strained. You don't go, I hope they end up together by the end of this film. Because even though the dialogue between the two played off really well, they never really looked out for each other in a romantic way. The two certainly cared about one another, but how it was portrayed didn't really feel intimate. Daniel Radcliffe plays the antagonist of this film. He plays the part as best as he could, but he was pretty disposable for the most part. If they wanted to make him a threat, you could really make him do something vicious to show some genuine peril that Bullock and Tatum must experience. The way you would record a good comedy film is by a particular scene that you could quote, or a scene that had some extraordinary physical stunt. It's a type of genre that relies on certain scenes to make the film as memorable to watch, because when you go to see any comedy movie you hope to laugh, and that's how you judge its success. The supporting cast were not that funny at all. The scenes between Loretta's agents and the pilot felt like a way for the writers to say, how do we fill up this time so the movie can reach 2 hours? I didn't see a reason for those two characters, and especially the social media PR person, whatever you call it. I don't care. She was really bad, and her lines felt like they were trying to appease to a younger audience, which seemed like studio interference from Fox. It was either that or just weak writing. The only subplot character that did work was arguably the best part of the whole film. That was centered on Brad Pitt's character as this parody version of an action hero. What The Lost City needed was a twist in the game, something that would keep the audience a little more engaged in the story and make them want to go back and see it again. There was just a lot of dead air and awkward silence. The energy had to rely on Bullock and Tatum's chemistry, which can often be enough to make a film successful. Rush Hour 3 isn't great, but the chemistry between Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker makes it watchable. The film probably isn't catered towards me because comedy is such a broad and objective genre. It's never going to appeal to everyone. I like the humour in Kung Fu Hustle, but someone else will say it's not for them, and will prefer something like The Hangover, or The Nutjob 2, or Dumbo. Now, a lot of people are saying this movie drags whenever Bullock and Tatum aren't on screen, and to an extent I agree with that, but there were a few moments in the film where their scenes dragged, and could have been elevated with something a little more creative when facing the obstacles on their journey. Overall, this movie had all the right ingredients to be a great and memorable experience, but lacked that cutting edge in a rather bland final act and really weak jokes throughout the film.